Hello, my friends. Glad to see you again. Today, we're going to pick up where we left off from last session. You and your opponents still cannot come to an agreement. So, what can we do? In the next two sessions, number 15 and 16, we'll focus on what you may consider to do if you still cannot resolve the issue with your opponents. You need to negotiate. Since negotiation is really a form of art, its success really depends on a lot of factors. What worked in one situation may not apply to the next. But I strongly believe that the basic principles discussed in the PELETE Way stayed true and remained unchanged. How you can apply these basic principles tactfully and successfully is based on your wisdom and experience. You need to learn from your lessons. Let your experience be your teacher. I can only provide you with these basic principles with slight elaborations, the ways that I've seen it happen in my private life and as a management professional. Nothing more. Step 5. Trade. What does the word mean with respect to negotiation? Trade, it means trade-off, exchange, compromise, give and take. You trade with your opponents to an agreement if you could be tolerant enough to ignore and or embrace the differences in exchange for your opponent's cooperation during the negotiation. So for this episode, I'm going to talk about from negotiation stalemate to breakthrough. If you and your opponents still cannot come to a full agreement on issues or business deals, you may need to do the following to help break the stalemate. You need to first identify and analyze the barriers to an agreement. Then seek out the solutions or options that are mutually acceptable. And I'll show you how later. Thirdly, have your contingency plan in place and updated. In other words, you need a backup plan to fall back on in case the things go sour. A. Types of barriers. Remember, we've discussed this before. For details, please refer to videos number 6 and 7, Communication Barriers. So let's do a quick review. 1. Negotiators. His reputation. How's the person in the moral sense? Is he honest? If not, how can you negotiate with someone you don't trust? No way. At best, you just go through the motions with him. You're performing, that's all. No meaningful agreement can be reached this way. His rank. Can he make the decision, or is he just the messenger? Corporate buyers like to negotiate with someone who's the decision makers. Who doesn't? 3. The negotiator's behavior and the reaction during their negotiation. Does he like to play subtle tricks on the opponents, or is he just being melodramatic on everything his opponents say or do? These are the negotiator's issues making negotiation hard to proceed. 2. Negative emotions. First one up. Fear of uncertainty. This is a common fear many people suffer from. People are afraid of things they don't know or cannot control. 2. People's bad mood. It may cloud their judgment. 3. Hostility, distrust, anger, and so on. The lack of trust makes all but impossible to negotiate with anyone. This, in my view, is the number one barrier. 3. Lack of interest. 1. No needs. Useless. I have no use for it. 2. Nothing to gain. What's in it for me? Nothing's in it for me. Why should I go through all the trouble negotiating? I'm still getting the same paid if I negotiated successfully or not. I've heard people saying that repeatedly. 3. Below the expectation. Too expensive, or the quality is not good enough for the price I'm willing to pay. 4. Attitudes. First one up, stubborn, inflexible bargaining position. For example, if you say, I want 35% profits regardless, and I demand an unconditional apology first before we meet again, or we don't meet at all. That's your bargaining position. But underneath it all, that 35% may not be your real interest. What you really want is higher volumes to compensate for the overheads. 2. Ego, credits. Oftentimes the negotiator's bloated ego will get in the way of negotiation. You need to treat the problem with tact and help save his face. Give him credits where it's due. 3. Lying, dishonest. If your opponents lie to you, you may not be able to detect it in real time and suffer the consequences. All I can advise you is do your homework well to minimize your risk of being taken. 4. Perceived power. If your opponents have all the leverages, you may not stand a chance to have a satisfactory agreement. 5. Prejudice and arrogance. In my view, again, it is hard to deal with this type of barriers if it's a serious attitudinal problem. You may waste your time trying to reason with a person if his biased views are so deeply ingrained. B. Identify the barriers. How? First, market intelligence or community wisdom. Your marketing department or the capable frontline sales find out about the barriers, or you take advantage of your ability to give and or receive the community wisdom, better known as gossiping. 2. Your opponents tell you straight without asking. For example, you may hear they say, your company does not have the track records to back you up what you claim. Or, I don't know the person well enough to trust him. They just tell you straight. 3. You skillfully ask your opponents to reveal it to you, such as by asking, why? Why not? How come? Help me understand the issues. I seize your point. Tell me more. Why is it so important to you? I don't get it. Please paraphrase or elaborate. Analyze the barriers for possible solutions. How? Again, we've gone through this before. For details, refer to videos 8 and 9 prepared. Let's do a quick summary here. 1. Tune your mindset. 2. Gather data. 3. Investigate. 4. Data analysis. 5. Possible solutions by brainstorming internally. Of course, in reality, you don't need to go through all the steps. These steps serve as reminders for your consideration. Remember, at this point, you are armed with possible solutions from either you think it through by yourself personally or agreed upon internally as a group. Then you start to investigate the mutually acceptable solutions with your opponents. The question is how. 1. Work as a team with your opponents. It is quite important to get your opponents involved in the quest for solutions. But how? A. You need to separate people from the problem and deal with it separately. Don't mistake one for the other. If you're attacked or criticized, don't react and lose your temper. Don't take it personally. Maintain your sound attitude. Treat your opponent's negative attitude in a positive light. as a constructive criticism, or as a self-reflection. Next, B, to focus on true interest, relevance, not positions. How? A good example would be the 35% profit scenario that I mentioned a minute ago, because the opponent's position may not be the root cause to the problem. So how could we find out the true interest? By using the 5-why probing method to reveal the underlying interest. And I'll present 2 examples to make the point later soon. Once you have the interest identified, then start discussing true interests. Tell your opponents your interest and vice versa. Let's talk about the 5-why probing method. What is it? Its applications are versatile and universal. Firstly, it is commonly used for problem solving to determine the underlying root cause of a problem. Secondly, it can be used to determine the true interest or relevance of a concerned matters or barriers during the negotiation process. Thirdly, it can be used to uncover the hidden answers to questions of all sorts, so its application is universal. So how do we go about it? By repeatedly asking why to a statement and to its subsequent answers until the root cause or interest relevance of a problem is revealed or satisfied. By the way, a word of caution, you may need to investigate and verify the answers if necessary. For details, please consult videos number 8 and 9. The industry's quality system typically suggests that you need to ask why 5 times. As to how many times, it really depends. So let's see some examples. The following is the conversation between a man named Jack and a police officer who's investigating the root cause to the man's dispute with his friend Tom. The conversation goes like, Jack said to the police, "Officer, I want you to arrest Tom immediately." So that's Jack's position. Police ask, "Why would I want to do that?" Jack said, "Because he hit me." Police asked again, "Why did he hit you?" Jack said, "Because I called him nasty names." Police asked, "Why did you call him nasty names?" Jack said, "Because he owes me $50, then refuses to pay me back." Police asks, "Why did he refuse to pay you back?" Jack said, "Because he's mad at me." Police asked again, "Why is he mad at you?" Jack said, "Because I lost his cell phone that he loaned me." Bingo, the root cause. Now the root cause to the problem is identified. Both parties can then discuss solutions more amicably. Yes? No? Next one is the conversation between the QA technician and his manager. It's about troubleshooting to pinpoint the root cause to the defective products. QA. The defect rates are quite high recently. Better not to sell them. Manager. Why did we make so many defective products? QA. Because the operators kept adjusting the settings on the machine. Hard for them to set it right. Manager. Why did they keep adjusting? QA. Because the specs of the incoming raw materials were unstable. Why were they unstable? Because the recent temperature fluctuations in the storeroom. Manager. Why the temperatures fluctuated? QA. Because the thermostats that we installed last week malfunctioned. Manager. Why the new thermostats malfunctioned so quickly? QA. Because the service technician used a cheaper part instead to fix it. Bingo! There you have it again, the root cause identified. Of course, you can continue asking why to get to the real bottom of it. Next, C. Invent and discuss options for compromise or trade. Keep in mind you need to be flexible so you can make the pie bigger. Remember to ask problem-probing, open-ended, exploratory questions that start with why, why not, when, where, who, what, how, if, what if, let's suppose, let's assume. So let's see some examples. Why, why not, how come, what's wrong with it, what's the purpose, what would you suggest, what would you do if you were me, what if I reduce the price, would you do this? Exactly my thoughts. Good idea. I think that it'll work. Please tell me why you believe it's fair or unfair. Next, D. Work out the objective standards for fairness. Whatever standards they may be, as long as you and your opponents agree to. If not, you and your opponents may resort to government-issued data or the professional standards, and many more. Or you can rely on the arbitrary. Even this has its limits, legal binding for one. Then again, legal binding or not, as long as the two sides agree to. 2. Help your opponents to earn credits and save face. Make your opponent feel it's his ideas to a solution, even though it's yours. You need to do it with subtlety. Work with your opponent to solve his problems. This happened to me a few times. I've worked with the corporate buyers to bypass their legal formality without getting the projects bogged down. It would take years for their corporate legal department to make changes to errors in the standard form contracts, for example. Of course, some might argue otherwise. Well, I guess it's a judgment call. Next, 3. Don't push too hard, too quickly for an agreement. Always ask your opponent's opinions and suggestions, so he feels he's involved, he is respected. Write down in the piece of paper what's agreed to and what's outstanding at the end of the negotiating meeting. Then ask your opponents to confirm. Give your opponents enough time to consider. Don't rush him if you can. Last but certainly not least, 3. The contingency plan. Have your contingency plan in place. 1. Think about your backup plan. If still no agreement can be reached, what would you do then? The term commonly used in negotiation is an acronym BATNA. It stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement, or to put it simply, your Plan B, the backup plan, the contingency plan. Next, 2. Know your BATNA and update it constantly. If you made progress during the process of negotiation, don't forget to update your BATNA immediately if you see fit. Learn your opponent's BATNA if you can, by market intelligence and group brainstorming to analyze your opponent's BATNA impacts. How? By applying the PELETE matrix analysis. For details, please refer to video number 13. In the next session, and I'll show you a simplified example how to do the BATNA analysis using a matrix table. Just keep in mind that there are 3 sides to every story: mine, yours, third parties. And every story can be told in 2 ways, positive or negative ways. Next, agreement or not. If a mutual agreement with satisfaction can be reached, it offers the following benefits. 1. Protection of your interest. You're less likely to regret since you have thought out carefully all possible scenarios and their consequences and then made the final decisions. You are less likely to be taken advantage of. 2. You gain the maximum benefits for the leverages you have. 3. The agreement would be durable and lasting because it is based on objective standards for fairness, plus a little mutual trust. 4. You'll have stability and a peace of mind. For example, if your contract would last for a few decent years, you could focus your energy and resources on something more productive as opposed to finding new customers every 6 months or so. Or politically, the negotiated peace between two countries would endure longer by comparison. If not, then move on to step 6, execute. Once again, we've come to the end of the session. So let's summarize graphically what trade means. We started with no or partial agreement between parties A and B. Party A, the supervisor, whose initial offer is indicated by the yellow oval, and party B, the disgruntled worker, still refuses to accept the offer. Thus, the two circles could barely overlap. Then parties A and B continue to talk. Party A skillfully managed to identify the root cause to Party B's reluctance to agree. They jointly invent options to overcome the barriers by giving up their previous insistences and exchange for something in return. By being tolerant and embrace the differences, making the pie bigger. Finally, they compromised and reached an agreement. As you can see, Party A gave up some of his initial offer in exchange for the acceptable options, the big green square. An agreement is finally reached. Both sides are happy and shake hands. On the other hand, if the parties A and B are still pig-headed enough and refuse to compromise, as indicated by the two separate circles, then we moved into the final step of the PELETE Way, execute. That's it for the session, and that Omicron just won't go away without a fight. Hang in there. This is Peter Chang. See you next time.